Joshua Buatsi stops Ricard Bolotnkis. He moves on potentially to a world title fight. But should he challenge for a world title or should he conquer Britain first? Amir Khan versus Kell Brook looks as if it's finally happening, but is the fight as big as it once seems? A former two-weight world champion is set to make one last hoorah in the world of boxing. And Jake Paul has his own hit list, and there's a huge fight in the 147 division to talk about this weekend. This is Lights Out. I am Faisal Khan, and this is another edition of the Lights Out Boxing podcast number 37. And with me, delighted to be joined by one of the old and usual faces of Lights Out, Mr. Mohsin Gulsher. Mohsin, good evening. A pleasure as always. Thank you very much for joining us. Good to have you on, brother.
Thank you for having me on, brother.
Nice. Listen, you're practically, stuck with Lights Out now. Yeah, you are part of the furniture. You like the little bit of the chewing gum on the bottom of the shoe, which we just can't
get rid of, yeah?
Yeah. No, it's all love. Appreciate you jumping on as always. And before we get started, we're going to be having two special guests join us today. Professional boxer Michael Stephenson, and fingers crossed he still does manage to pull through, Xavier Miller, the head trainer of the Bodysnatcher, Dillian Whyte. Lots to talk about today, but obviously before we move on to the topics that we're going to discuss, I believe Michael is joining us right now. I'm going to add him to the stream. He's just come back from a training session. Michael, thank you very much for taking your time out to join today's podcast. This is Michael Stephenson, a professional boxer from Bedford. He's appeared many times on Lights Out. We've had many fun memories with Michael over the years. We've been interviewing him since 2018. I remember Mohsin interviewed him after I believe it was his last fight in the Corn Exchange in Bedford. Yeah. Michael's a bundles of laugh. Michael, thank you very much for joining us, mate. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
No, listen, Michael, always good to see your face as always. And we've got a lot to talk about today, including the return to the ring for yourself. For those who haven't, please make sure you check us out on all the social media platforms. The links are below in the description. And once this podcast has ended, I'll remember to add Michael's social media links as well. So be sure to give him a follow, especially for all you nice single-looking ladies out there as well. Make sure you check him out. All right. And of course, if you want to listen to this podcast on any of the podcast platforms such as Spotify or Pocket Cast, the links are going to be below in the description a little later on tonight. Let's move on, because with every podcast we start off with our quick fire question. Didn't put it in the transcript, didn't even give Michael a transcript, so it's unscripted for him tonight. Ron, you've got no excuses, brace yourself. Today's quick fire question: what is your greatest Muhammad Ali moment? Being the host of the podcast, I think it's only fair that I answer first. And I'm going to go with the moment he beat George Foreman in Zaire, Rumble in the Jungle. Wasn't born at the time. And I've watched the fight many times on YouTube. I've watched clips, the build up to it. But where I gained most of my knowledge was from the Ali movie that featured Will Smith. And watching that build up, how it was all made around Zaire. And there was obviously a lot of politics going on at the time. I just feel, obviously, with the layoff he had around that time before fighting Foreman, for him to go to a country and do it in Africa and gain the support he did, especially what was going on with him in his career with the politics side out of the ring. I think for me, that was his most fitting moment to stop George Foreman and become a two-time world heavyweight champion. That's my fondest memory of Muhammad Ali. Mike, what's your fondest memory of the greatest of all time?
When he beat Sonny Liston. So when Sonny Liston was a monster, he was knocking everyone out. Muhammad Ali, I think he was 22. He was coming back. Well, he was saying that, yeah, he will knock him out. Everyone thought he was, who is this guy? Everyone thought, who is Cassius Clay at that time? He came there. I think, did he just come back winning the gold? I think it was just like, after he won the gold, he said that he was the greatest, but he was only 22 at the time. Sonny Liston was knocking everyone out, and Muhammad Ali done it. Yeah, when he knocked him out, I think that is the game changer. I think when someone undestructible like Sonny Liston at the time, and a young little Cassius Clay came over and just knocked him out and stopped him actually on the stool.
Brutal knockout as well. I remember that knockout when he knocked out Sonny Liston. They fought twice, didn't they? I believe it was twice, and the first time he knocked him out was brutal. I think they compared like Sonny Liston as like the brawler of the heavyweight division at the time.
Yeah,
You know,
he
sort
was
of like the mental one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he made him quit. He made him quit on the stool.
He did. He did. Yeah. Ron, what was your fondest memory of Muhammad Ali?
I mean, that's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, Ali was inspirational in the ring as well as outside the ring as well, for what he did for the civil rights movements, just for his character, his personality. I'm going to pick up, I mean, you both have picked boxing moments. For me, Ali really, for what he stood for, and when he kind of stood up against going to Vietnam. And as a result of that, he sacrificed his career. He lost 3 or 4 years of his career, and he still come back and he won the title. That shows his stature, his character. 3-time champion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how amazing is that? So for me, Ali was amazing in the ring. The Ali shuffle, the movement that he produced, but is what he stood for as outside the ring. For me, that's and there's so many great moments there.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments you can pick with Muhammad Ali. He had such a lucrative career. The respect he gained in and out of the ring. Just a phenomenal, iconic figure in the sport of boxing, and they will definitely, personality-wise, I don't think you'll ever get someone just like Muhammad Ali. I mean, forget his boxing skills. I mean, his people skills, all the charity work he did, and all the good he did, especially with coming out and changing his name. And he was a proud Muslim as well. A wonderful, iconic figure, and definitely there will be no one quite like him. I mean, I think we are likely to get another Floyd Mayweather. We are likely to get another great fighter coming in our time, but I just think
the closest person to Ali at the moment, I would say, talking about his stature, how he talks, how he presents himself, is Tyson Fury. For me, to be fair.
Yeah, look, I would like to say, boxing wise, I think that the way technically how they are, the way they move their feet around the ring, and their head movement, I think Tyson Fury is today's modern day Muhammad Ali. In terms of outside the ring, I'm not too sure. And I don't want to diss Tyson, because if anyone knows me well enough to know that I'm a huge Tyson Fury fan, and I have him as the #1 heavyweight in the world today.
I think it's the fact that Fury, like Muhammad Ali, was the civil rights. He done civil rights, and Tyson Fury. You think about it, look at the stuff he's done for mental health and how many people. And I think that is the same kind of statue, but civil rights to mental health. If Tyson Fury was in the 1960s, would he be different and talk about civil rights? You would never know. But I think the closest person, and I think Tyson Fury does look up to Muhammad Ali.
Of course.
I mean, I agree with those sentiments. I mean, you can see the parallels there between the two characters. Very live wire characters, kind of. People couldn't stand them when they're early on in their careers. I mean, I couldn't stand Tyson Fury. I'm thinking, what the hell is he doing? Coming into dressed up as a Batman outfit or whatever it was. And Ali with, lyrically, he was fantastic, wasn't he? With the rhymes that he used to come up with. I remember his famous words. I shook up the world. When he won the title against Liston when he was Cassius Clay.
Ron, just to stop you there, I'm going to have to introduce our other special guest. Good evening to you, Mr. Xavier Miller. Thank you very much for joining us. How have you been as of late?
Very good, thank you. How are you guys?
We're very well, thank you for asking. Very, very pleased that you could.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, and very, very happy to have you on. Xavier, meet Ron. Ron, meet Xavier. Xavier, meet Mike. Mike, meet Xavier.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Xavier, before we obviously move on to discuss what we were planning on discussing, we do a quick fire question with every podcast. So it'd be great to get your thoughts. As you can see, the quick fire question is at the bottom of the screen. What was your greatest Muhammad Ali moment?
There's just far too many. I think when he beat George Foreman, because it was the talk going in, you're going to get killed in the ring, and he's an animal, and this and that, and listen, he just picked the perfect tactics, and George is an all-time great. He's special, but Ali just played a mental game with him, and came with a victory. It's just one of the greatest performances of all time. So yeah, that's probably the one that sticks in my head. Even though obviously the Sonny Liston one was great too, but that one against Foreman is the one.
100%. Well, thank you very much for that, Xavier. Right, guys. Well, let's move on. The question Xavier was probably fearing most, because I know he probably gets it asked to him on a daily basis. An update on the Bodysnatcher, the guy that you work with week in, week out. And of course, obviously, we'll relate the question to the fans as well, and they can get back to us in the comment section. But first of all, it's been quite a while now since that victory over Alexander Povetkin. What can you tell us about Dillian's progress in the gym and training camp, and how's he looking?
Yeah, training camp is training camp for everybody. When you go to the gym every day, you should be learning. If you're not learning, then something's seriously wrong. You know. And since I met Dillian, there's specific things that I want him to improve on, and he's been open. And he's a very good student. I don't have to tell Dillian to work hard. Dillian has never needed any reason to work hard. He works hard in the gym. Every time he gets in the gym, he wants to work and put in a good shift. So he's in a very good place right now. We're just obviously we're waiting in line. We want our title shot desperately, but he's doing the right thing. Staying active. At the end of the day, he's a prize fighter, and he needs to fight. Throughout history, too many times guys have waited on other opponents. Waited on title shots, and you can go stale, and then that's usually when guys like to pick you off. If you haven't been in the ring for a couple of years or you haven't been that active, then they want to give you a shot. No, Dillian staying active and doing what he should do. Stay in the gym and stay active.
The main question is obviously who's he going to fight next? Is he going to fight in America, in UK? But what I would like to ask you is that I was listening to one of Eddie Hearn's interviews, and he said he'd like Tyson Fury to be put in recess and for Dillian Whyte to be awarded the full-time world champion. To some people, obviously, that's, some people would say, yes, the right thing to do, or some people would say it's the easy thing to do. But as Dillian's head trainer, would you not like to see him fight someone like maybe Andy Ruiz or whoever's next in the line in terms of the WBC ranking and win the title in the ring rather than just give it to him, considering what's gone on with the WBC in the past?
No, listen, the governing bodies, they need to start being more consistent. If you're an interim champion and the champion is no longer to function, if he can't fight, or he's been absent for a long period, they vacate. And if you're the interim champion, you get elevated to champion status. It's simple. It's similar to what's happened with Manny Pacquiao. He didn't box for a couple of years. So, they took the belt from him and gave it to Ugas. I mean, you can't hold these belts hostage. Life goes on. If you're not going to defend your belt, you vacate. When you do come back, yes, to me, you should get the first shot. Because if you vacate the title and lose in the ring, then obviously you come back after a year, yeah, you got every right to fight for your belt. But you got no one, to me, is bigger than boxing. You shouldn't be able to just hold on to belts. And to me, Dillian, his resume is one of the best in boxing, including world champions. His resume is it's proven. There's not much more he has to do to deserve a title shot. Now, if the guys that he should be getting a title shot from are not willing to fight him for whatever reason, and they vacate, then he should get made champion. We're more than happy to go and defend the belt against Joshua, Wilder, Ruiz, whoever. But this is a man that deserves his shot.
100%.
Do the right thing for boxing. And like I said, this is the only problem with boxing to me is there's no governing body governing everything. If there was one governing body overseeing everything, these guys wouldn't be allowed to get away with what they're getting away with. But you see, because they're independent, you've got to play their game, unfortunately. So again, we're waiting in line. We are doing the right things to deserve a title shot. We're doing our part. These guys have got to do their part. As I said, I had an interview the other day. I was saying that it's not a good look for boxers coming up. I also have my own amateur boxing club, and they're watching these professional boxers. They're watching these boxers go through hell to get to a number one position, and then you're not getting a shot at the title. I mean, what are these young fighters actually thinking when they hear these things? They're in their gym, in their mind, if I do the right things and I work hard, I'll get the rewards. But that's not what's happening. And you see, that's why sport needs to be cleaned up.
So sorry, guys. Obviously, before you ask your questions, there's a lot I could ask Xavier right now. But would you say there's an agenda against Dillian Whyte? Because for me, in my notebook, I've had him down as the number one challenger since he beat Lucas Brown, and that's, I believe, going all the way back to 2017.
Yeah, I mean, even before I even met Dillian, because remember, I was actually in the corner with Don Charles for the rematch with Chisora. So even before I even met Dillian, I was saying, why are they doing this to this guy? I thought it was a bit strange. I don't know what else he needs to do. I don't know why it's happening. I mean, no one really has the answers. But, listen, these guys have got their own agenda or their own way of doing things. And unfortunately, life goes on. You've got to do what you've got to do until you get your shot. And that's exactly what we're doing. Okay,
perfect. Guys, floor's all yours. Take it away. Xavier's a very confident man. He's never shy of answering any questions. So go ahead.
I haven't shied away from a question yet. I'm still waiting.
I mean, no, credit where it's due for, Dillian Whyte. I mean, who hasn't he fought, in this time where he should have been challenging for the title? I mean, like the Povetkins, the Wax, Oscar Rivas, that was the most avoided fighter. Chisora, those two great fights that he gave us. Joseph Parker, Lucas Brown. So, yeah, I mean, what does he need to do? I mean, can you see Dillian going to America? Does he need to kind of really put himself, his name out there in the US fighting against a James Franklin?
Definitely. I mean, if not this year or towards the end of the year, then next year, definitely we're looking to go to America. We're not worried about fighting anywhere. That's fine. We'll do whatever's necessary to get that shot at that title. So if that means building up your brand or your name in away from the UK, then we're willing to do that.
But wouldn't you say that he's made his name already? Like I said, he's 34 now, so he's done everything he needs to make his name. Wouldn't you just? And he's fought everyone that he needs to fight. Like he said, he's not a Joshua. He hasn't had that amateur pedigree. He hasn't had that money pumped in him from the start. He started on the small hall shows and he's worked his way up. And the best thing he ever done was lost against Joshua. Yeah, and that's when he started to learn and develop. And he's fought everyone. Realistically, Tyson Fury and Joshua, probably the only two you would say commercially are bigger than him in England or probably in the world. Anyone else, I think.
Those two guys have also travelled. I mean, Dillian's travelled, but also, but a high-profile fight and in the US, it can't help your brand, can it? It makes sense because remember the US is so much bigger than the UK. People actually forget the reason why Lennox and these guys, they branched out is because obviously, you're a world champion,
Yeah, but that's the 1990. We're talking about 2021, where everything happens in the UK for me. As a professional fighter, I would say, listen, if I'm Dillian, I'm thinking you're coming to my town. Why am I traveling over to you when I'm eighth? Like Mayweather, for example, he is not going to fight outside of America because he is, as he said, A side. Dillian Whyte is A side now, except from Joshua and Fury, the only two I'd say who would be the A side against him. So why would you go to America and
Xavier, can I answer that for you?
Because the wider audience, that's a simple answer. You want to get to a wider audience, and still, you got pay-per-view in the UK. You'd also like to have that pay-per-view in the US. It becomes massive. That's probably why the other guys have travelled as well, because listen, the US is a massive, massive market. I know we're good over here. In the UK, we're comfortable. Boxing is massive in the UK. But, at the same time, England is very small in comparison, to the US.
Okay.
I think, look, I'm going to answer Mike's question, because Dillian Whyte is a type of person, if you said there's a war zone right now in the middle of your street, but you've got to go fight Chisora, he'd be like, yeah, no problem. Give me my gloves, put a referee in. That's just the type of person Dillian Whyte is. For me, Dillian Whyte, I mean this with all due respect, Xavier, does not belong in this era. For me, he belongs in the Lewis, the Holyfield, the Riddick Bowes, the Mike Tyson. That for me is the era that he should be in right now, along with probably Joshua and Fury, but to a certain extent. But if you ask me, the biggest cojones in that division right now is Dillian Whyte. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's been ranked #1 in the WBC for how long? And as Ron just said, he's fought Chisora twice, he's fought Joseph Parker, he's fought Oscar Rivas, he's fought Lucas Brown, and he's fought Povetkin twice. This guy doesn't have to be fighting right now. He could easily sit on his sofa and say, "No, do you know what?
You could take over fights as well. You know, he's got that #1 position, but he hasn't. He's chosen to be like, right, let's have it." And I love that about Dillian, that he's got the biggest, like you said, biggest cojones. So,
at the same time, you see, Dillian, you know, he didn't have a big or experienced amateur background. So he's getting the experience fighting top level guys. You know, it's a bit like what you're looking at, like Fabio. You know, he fought Medina quite recently. You know, you can make up that gap with the amateurs if you come from like white collar or have very limited amateur experience by fighting better opposition. And the reason why I believe Dillian is ready now to win a world title is because of the guys that he's beat.
Okay, right. Well, guys, let's try and move on. I mean, obviously, we all want to know what's next for Dillian. Xavier, just sum it up for us before we do move on to our next topic on the podcast. Who is your #1 opponent that you'd like to see Dillian fight next?
I want to fight for a world title. So whoever the guys that got the world titles, that's my first choice, obviously. Outside of that, I like the Arreola fight. I like the Andy Ruiz fight. I like the Jermaine Franklin fight.
Listen, whenever Dillian's involved, one is pay-per-view worthy, and two, you can't knock the guy, man. For me, definitely, if you want to get all the heavyweights together and put all the testicles together, Dillian's got the biggest for me. And I know I probably shouldn't say that, but it's the honest truth. And there's a massive respect to the guy. You can't knock what he's been doing over the last few years. No. He is value for money. Moving on, because last Saturday night saw the finale of Fight Camp, 3 brilliant weeks. Massive shout out to DAZN, Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, and who main event in that card was Josh Buatsi with a stunning performance against Ricard Bolotnkis. Now, there's been a debate going around social media all week, and it's a debate that I'm enjoying as of lately. Now, we're getting this debate quite a lot, and one of the most depressing things in British boxing for me is we don't get to see the domestic fighters fight each other enough. It's not happening enough, in my opinion. But obviously, you guys will give your opinion on it. But and again, no disrespect to the panel, I want to start off with Xavier Miller, because he's got younger fighters that are coming up. As you just mentioned, he's training amateur fighters. What's your path? You know, what do you believe is the right move? Do you believe you should conquer Britain, Europe, then world elite level? Because we're hearing Eddie Hearn would like him to have another warm-up fight, then perhaps early February of next year take on Bivol for the world title. But when you look at that light heavyweight division, Yard, Callum Johnson, Lyndon Arthur, you've even got Callum Smith now. There's still Craig Richards. There's still good domestic fights out there to be made. What do you think is the next step for Joshua Buatsi, especially after his performance on Saturday night?
I think the best way for me to answer this question is my belief has always been I've got no problem with a boxer challenging for a world title. What I've got a problem with is the fighters that win a world title and then don't want to fight the other champions. So like picking and choosing, you might pick, the weakest opponent in that weight category. And then when you win that title, then you want to be moving up, moving down, or avoiding the other guys in the division. Me, I'm coming from the old school. You know, obviously my favourite fighter of all time is Evander Holyfield, and he's undisputed in 2 weight divisions. To me, that means that you're #1.
Yeah.
If you've got all the belts, you're #1. You can't claim to be #1 unless you have all those belts. So for Buatsi, do I think he's good enough to challenge those other world champions? Yes, I do. So I think that he should go for a world title. It depends how he feels. I think he's good enough, but I'd also, like you were saying, I like to see him involved in these domestic fights because there's so many good guys around. You've got Yard, Arthur, Craig Richards, who I know as well. These are all good fights. But, with world titles comes money. There's a big difference between fighting for a British title and getting a purse and fighting for a world title and getting a purse, generally. So
100%.
I think, you want to put value on your name. So I don't think it's a problem him going for a world title, but I do think he can be competitive with the other guys. As I say, I've got a problem with guys winning world titles and then just
disappearing in the wilderness. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what Josh Taylor did. He's done it the right way. There's no dispute. There's no argument. He's #1 in that division, just like Terence Crawford was. You know, we want to see the same thing in the welterweight division. You should want to clear out your division, like Thomas Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard. You should want to be number one, like Hopkins, like Hagler. You should want to be the best. You know, to me, picking up a world title, that's good, that's great, massive achievement. But you can't be screaming that I'm the best if you don't fight the other guys in the weight division.
100%. Lads, what's your thoughts on Joshua Buatsi and what's his next move?
I've got a question for Xavier. You know, Andre Ward kind of commented for Buatsi that it was a good win for Buatsi. Everything that took place was what he needed to prepare him for tougher competition. Now, Xavier, I just want to ask you, as a coach perspective, that's his first fight under Virgil Hunter. What did you make of it? Did you see any changes from his previous performance, his style, his defense? I mean, he came through really with flying colours in that fight. I think it was a solid performance. What was your take on it? How do you think that chemistry is working with a top coach like Virgil in your corner?
Yeah, I think I could see a few subtle changes here and there. I actually liked when he was using one hand to defend, when he was catching shots on his right and left side and then coming back with shots. I like that. You know, he looked good doing that. I think he still got hit with too many right hands. But, you know, the guy is like, he's tough. You know, he looks like he's ready to fight these world champions. And Virgil, I think what he'll bring is more the mental side of the game.
Yeah.
You know, that was the first time I think Buatsi had gone past 7 or 8 rounds. And you could see that he was smart enough to take a recovery round after he had a very good 6. I think it was a 6th round where he almost got the guy out. Then he took a round off, went behind his jab, used the ring, and then he come back the next round with a lot of spark and energy. So I like the way he almost controlled, you know, the 11 rounds. You know, he got a lot of experience from it, which that's why I think he's, you know, in a good position to step up. But Virgil, you know, he's been around. He's had loads of good guys, obviously, an all-time great. You know, he's had Khan, he's had Berto. So that he's the other thing that people seem to forget is not every time you go to a new coach, everything just clicks.
100%.
Yeah,
it takes time to build a relationship. You know, because you as a coach, you've got your ways and how you like things done. Then the boxers got their own ways, and you kind of have to find a happy medium. That can happen after one fight. It can happen after 2, but usually that takes time to develop. So I think if he sticks with what he's doing, I think we'll see a very different looking Buatsi in 12 months.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, he's right. He's 100% right. It's going to take time, and I would, you know, Virgil Hunter. He's a very experienced coach, and I think it made sense them two teaming up together. I mean, if he is to go up to that next level, you want, you know, a world-class coach with you, and I think Virgil Hunter is one of the best out there, and Virgil Hunter knows the game inside out, and he knows that Buatsi's a raw talent. But when you look at that 175 division, you know, all right, so people don't really give Bivol the credit that he deserves for his performance against Craig Richards, but it doesn't mean he's a bad fighter. And then you look at Berta Biev, was an awesome fighter. You look at, you know, Joe Smith Jr., you know, there's Badu Jack. You know, regardless of what you think of him, John Pascal's still in there. You know, there's still very, very good fighters in that division. And I think when you do go up to world level, it's good to have that sort of, you know, guy around you that's been like involved in these big fights. And I think, you know, I mean, Xavier would tell you himself, you know, it's not only just the actual fight. Preparation is key. Preparation is one of the biggest things
always
in boxing.
I think fights are won and lost in camp.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. But I think with Buatsi, I think he has to fight one of those top 4, like I said, either the Arthur, Yard, Johnson. Like at that level, yeah. When you're at British level, there's not much difference. Mr. Million might agree with me. There's not much difference between British level and world level at the light heavyweight scene. Any of those 5 can go to that world level. I think, that's me personally. Look at Callum Johnson. He went at world level. I think he didn't, like I said, he fought, was it Berbatov, and he dropped him. He's never been dropped before. I think Yard, he went up to world level, weren't experienced enough. Craig Richards, I thought he done excellent against Bivol, and I think he done excellent. And from there, and if you think about it, when the most person that stepped up to world level was Craig Richards, and he performed. He's the only one that actually performed, if you know what I mean. But Buatsi, he went to European level before his last fight against, was it Ciliac? And he not struggle. Yeah, he did struggle, to be fair. People like that, he needs to be taking guys like that out to be at that top level. But for me, Buatsi, like, he will be a world champion, no doubt about that. 18 to 24, a year to 24 months, he will be a world champion.
I think he will be, yes.
What annoys me the most about when you talk about, for example, like a matchroom fighter fighting a Queensberry fighter, Frank Warren versus Eddie Hearn, they both say the same thing, that, let's not do it yet. Let's build that fight up. Let be world champion. But like, when you look at it, Dillian fought Anthony Joshua when they were both at British domestic level.
Yeah, but
George Groves fought James DeGale when they were both at British domestic level, and we're talking big fights. Do you know what I mean? They don't need world titles for it to be a big fight, and there's no harm if someone loses. The winner can still go on and achieve great things.
It's like Mayweather Pacquiao. They could have fought 10 years ago, fought for 10 million. They waited 6 years later and they fought, and he got 300 million. It's a business, if you know what I mean, as well. You delayed we want to see the fights, but as a business perspective, like I said, like Mayweather Pacquiao, they waited 6-7 more years and they developed and they got another extra. Like I said, they could have got 10 million, I think, each.
But at least it happened though.
Exactly.
But if money talks as well, why would you?
Kell Brook and Khan, that's never happened.
Well, it's a good thing you brought that up, Xavier, because that is our next topic. Because as of late, it does look like that fight is slowly progressing in the right way. Massive shame we didn't get this 6 or 7 years ago, but I actually have a feeling that we are going to see it now. Probably because they both know it's the only fight that's really going to make them any serious money. It's the fight that's going to make enough noise, enough hype. Exactly. Is it finally happening? Xavier, you stay close to Eddie Hearn. I know you've got a few guys in and around the matchroom camp, and I know you've probably bumped into Kell Brook over the last couple of months, but can you see it finally happening now? Are we set to see Amir Khan versus Kell Brook?
I've only ever bumped into Kell Brook at the Golovkin weigh-in. That's the only time I've actually bumped into the guy.
Okay.
And I bumped into Khan, I think it was the Crawford Khan weigh-in. But I don't know any of them. But I'm a big fan of Kell Brook. I'll be honest with you, because he's got. I mean, I know he's from the Ingle gym, but he doesn't have that Ingle style. He's got his own style. I think he's got one of the best jab pull counters for years. He performed really well against Sean Porter. I just think the Golovkin fight, I just think that ruined his career. Yeah. I just think it was the wrong fight at that time. When I actually saw the weigh-in, I couldn't actually believe the difference in size between the two of them. I thought, this is crazy. And then he's got to drop back down the weight, to fight Errol. I think the Errol Spencer fight would have been an even better fight if he hadn't had to drop all that weight and had that facial damage. So I'm a massive fan of Kell. I slightly favour him to beat Khan, but I see the fight going to points. I think Kell Brook is a better boxer. With Khan, we know the speed, but I think sometimes he throws. But I don't know how much method there is to it. With Kell, it's calculated. And that's the difference between the two to me. But they've both been great for British boxing. And, I think people are still going to be even interested, even now, even though it's late. I think people are still going to be interested. So I'm glad it's happening. Both guys are going to get paid well. And, we need to see more of this and earlier. I mean, there's a couple of guys at Matchroom.
100%.
Super featherweights. I think Joe Cordina and Zelva Barrett, they should be fighting each other.
Archie Sharp as well is in that division.
At this stage, those two, I think, would make a great fight. I think Eddie did mention that maybe an eliminator for a world title. That's a fantastic idea. And as we were saying earlier about George Groves and James DeGale early in their career, you say that those sort of fights, like for an eliminator for a world title, the winner goes on, the other guy, back down to domestic level and then build themselves back up again. Mm-hmm. It's a shame we never got Junior Witter and Hatton. So even though it's happening late, at least it's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Can't complain. Better late than never, as they say. Personally, I do believe this was the fight Amir Khan should have taken rather than the Danny Garcia fight. I thought at that time it was perfect to make Khan versus Brook. He took the Danny Garcia fight. We all know what happened there. I just didn't really recover after that. They both went up to 160. And as Xavier said, he saw Kell Brook at the Golovkin weigh-in and he couldn't believe what he was saying.
It looked ridiculous, honestly.
But, I think that's where I think Kell Brook's gone wrong in his career. I mean, I've noticed how he's moved up from 147, 154, 160. You know, it has been done in the past, but you know, you've got to be on a different level to sort of go up in weight and carry on going up in weight. Some people can do it, some fighters can do it, some fighters can't do it, and I think that's what's affected Kell Brook a lot. I mean, that's where these damaging injuries have come from.
That's jumping. He jumped 2 weights. That's the problem, you see.
Yeah, exactly.
He jumped 2 weights against a genuine banger.
We know what happened against Canelo for Amir Khan when he jumped up 3 weights or something. What it was something ridiculous.
Yeah, you know. I mean, listen. Look, Mosley jumped 2 weights to beat De La Hoya. It can be done, but you know, Mosley's a different animal.
Yeah,
you know, and
there's levels.
There's levels. Yeah, I just think it was a crazy idea, but. Listen, you know, he's still gone on to have a decent career, but I think he would have had an even better one if he hadn't taken that Golovkin fight. I think the Errol Spence fight would have been great. Amazing.
We've had a comment from Umar Farouk. Massive shout out to Umar. He goes, the British public, in my opinion, doesn't matter anymore. It's several years too late. It's exactly what's wrong with boxing. Khan looking for a payday at the British public's expense. And you know what? I mean, listen, massive fan of Amir Khan. Xavier, you said you can't argue with that. I agree. I think he's 100% spot on. Amir Khan, if you'd asked him this before the Phil Greco fight, he was still that fight might happen, that fight might not happen, or it's going to happen when I say it is. Now all of a sudden he's so hell bent on the fight happening. I just think Amir Khan now knows he's not got many payday options left. He's not going to attract a fight with Errol Spence. Crawford wouldn't give him the time of day again. He'll never fight Manny Pacquiao. It just does not make any sense for Manny Pacquiao to fight Amir Khan. The biggest and only fight remaining for me, and that's excluding the Conor Benn fight as well, who I think is a brilliant fighter, is one of the next big stars. The Kell Brook fight makes more sense than any other fight. Guys, your thoughts on this?
100%, I agree.
Just one last comment. I mean, I've just seen recent in the social media that Amir Khan is training with Terence Crawford at the moment. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen that. That's an interesting one. I don't know how many fighters would train with a fighter that's defeated them. So I don't know if that's an ego. You have to put the ego and the pride to the side. But then I recently saw Kell Brook being interviewed. I think it was on the Zone with Eddie Hearn, and they were talking about the fight as well. You know, Kell Brook didn't look in fighting shape. So you know, for him to kind of really can drop down in weight, you know, is he in fighting? You know. What's he going to be like?
Look, I'm just hoping that Crawford doesn't look to low blow Amir Khan because of what happened last time. You know, let's just hope nothing happens. Then we get all the excuses that he can't fight and that he's out of an injury. We'll move on, obviously, because there are quite a few things to talk about, and one of them is this Saturday night's huge fight. One of my favorite fighters of all time, Manny Pacquiao takes on Yordenis Ugas. Now, again, not being biased, but obviously the build-up is going to be Pacquiao this, Pacquiao that. Is this going to be his last fight? You know, has Pacquiao still got in his tank? His last fight was all the way back in 2019 against Keith Thurman. But Yordenis Ugas, he's got a version of one of the world titles. I don't know whether it's a full version or whether it's not. And I don't want to get into the debate about versions of belts. But Ugas, how much of a threat does he present to Pacquiao on Saturday night? Are we looking at Ugas and not giving him the credit that he may deserve? Because his defeats have only come by split decisions, and he's lost to half-decent opponents. And he's the younger fighter. He's been the more active fighter. Is it not fair to say that Ugas should be considered the favourite going into this fight?
So this is a strange one. I think my concern is, okay, so the Spence fight was cancelled with 10 days out. A training camp is between 10 to 14 weeks. You spent your whole camp training for a southpaw. Then Spence gets injured, and now you've been offered this fight, and now you're fighting an orthodox fighter. To me, that poses massive problems to me, because it's, you know, your sparring has been tailored. You don't really have enough time to get too much sparring in before you're actually going to fight. I mean, it's just a week out. You know, once they announced that the fight wasn't going to go ahead, that makes the fight interesting. The question really is how good is Ugas? I thought he beat Porter. I thought he did look physically strong. Like, he was at times he could put in Sean Porter on the back foot, which is a very difficult thing to do. I know Sean Porter said that he was opting to box more, but that doesn't always work out that way. I mean, you get in the ring sometimes, you've got an idea of what you want to do, I saw Sean Porter try and get aggressive sometimes, but Ugas was pretty strong. He stood firm and was landing some good shots on him. So he's a decent operator. But what makes it interesting, obviously, is Manny is 42 or 43, how old he is, and Ugas is younger. Manny's obviously a different level, but this guy is young. So to me, it's an interesting fight. But I do slightly favour Pacquiao because the experience and the speed.
Yeah.
But honestly, I just don't think it's an ideal training camp. I'm surprised they didn't actually pull the fight and try to reschedule. But saying that, Manny's already been out for 2 years, so it wouldn't have helped him anyway. So it's probably better that he does compete. But so I'm fascinated because I did watch the Ugas and Porter fight live, and I was like, well, I'd never seen Ugas before that, and I scored the fight to Ugas by a round or two. So yeah, I'm intrigued.
Sorry, but I'm just hoping this isn't Manny Pacquiao's last fight. If he loses, you can definitely say he's going to call it a day. But we did the podcast last week, me and Ron, and we were disappointed because it's been a disappointing year for boxing. We've had too many big fights being postponed. There's been too many things being held back, and I think the Pacquiao versus Spence fight sort of kind of saved this year of boxing for me.
I actually agree with you. You know what would be ideal? Actually, it would be ideal if Manny Pacquiao was to win the fight.
Yeah,
but he didn't look good and then retired. That to me would be. I'd love to see him walk away with a win and not get bashed up or stopped by someone like Crawford or Spence. I don't really want it happening.
I was literally just about to say that. I think he's going to judge what happens next by his performance on Saturday night. I think an ugly win for him and a bad performance, I think that's going to say, I'm not going to step in with a Crawford or a Spence because I've just fought at that level. If I go that level above on the back of that performance, who knows? But then again, rustiness could play a part in it. Mike, you were going to say something?
No, I was going to say, it reminds me of Mayweather and Canelo. I think this fight will be. I think Pacquiao, like you said, he's been boxing since I was born. 27 years? He's been boxing since I was born, and I've been watching interviews on like YouTube, like the Showtime interviews, and like they do the Showtime Day thing, and he's saying like he's had 2 years to rest and recover, and he feels young. And like I said, you could be 42, but if your body's of a 29-year-old. If your body's a 29-year-old and you're 42 and you feel good, you got your power, you got your. He's not going in this. If he knew he could win this fight, he would not go in this fight. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the fame.
Make a very good point, Mike. Seriously,
he doesn't need the money.
He should really be too much for Ugas. He should really do a job on him. That's what should happen. If he's got anything left. There's
little things that he's gonna do. His foot, like I said, his foot movements is like feints. He's gonna be moving around. He's gonna be coming in, out. He's gonna draw him in, catch him in shots. And look when he fought Keith Thurman. Everyone thought Keith Thurman's gonna ruin him, go through him. And look what you made Keith Thurman look average.
Yeah, that was a masterclass performance by Pacquiao.
But I'm saying that was his last fight, wasn't it? Last fight. And he made the WBA and you'd put Keith Thurman with Terence Crawford, Spence. You'd put him in that category, in the top 5 best welterweights in the world. And Pacquiao, what was he, 40 at the time, made him look average. Keith Thurman didn't know what he was doing. I think Ugas is a good fight. I think, that, like you said, well, I don't know what happens at like the world level. Like if Dillian fights, is there always a backup fighter? So you pay someone to keep on shape so he comes in. Did they know what was going to happen? Or...
Listen, it's 4 decades of greatness we're seeing. This guy's been doing it since the 90s. If he gets knocked out in 20 seconds on Saturday and retires in the ring, we should be celebrating this guy's career because what he's done for boxing. 100%. Bear in mind he's into like politics now. How he is still willing to get in the. I mean, I know he's made a ton of money and he should be used to this, but the guy has just kept on going. Has fought the best. He's never backed down from a challenge. I watched one of his interviews today. He's still calling for the rematch with Floyd Mayweather. This is, for me, a true role model of the sport. And when I eventually do get that notification on my phone that Manny Pacquiao has officially retired from boxing, I'll be one fan that's definitely going to be mourning because there's a number of fighters that I really respect, and I definitely put him in that bracket. And if you want to look at a role model, you definitely look at Manny Pacquiao. David Haye to make a comeback against Joe Fournier, September the 11th. You know what? You know what? Right? I mean, you just can't write it. And for me, the massive eye opener in all of this is that he's been offered more money to fight Joe Fournier than the second fight against Tony Bellew. That just tells me Triller are going to take over boxing, because if they are managing to fork up the funds to give him a bigger payday than his second fight against Tony Bellew, says it all. Rod, talk to us, man. What do you make of it?
I mean, the expression on both Xavier and Michael's faces says the same thing to me as well. I mean, look, we saw that sham of a performance against Tony Bellew. You know, he was injured in the last few years of David Haye's career. You know, he wasn't a fit David Haye. You know, he was exciting. He was brilliant to watch. But, you know, he had one injury after another. It was a shoulder. It was the Achilles, and whatever it was. Well, fair play to him. You know, they're giving him that much money. Then brilliant. We're living in the YouTube age of boxing now. This is, you know, and we're in an age where the best won't fight the best. So we've got this YouTube culture that we've got the likes of Jake Paul, Logan Paul. They'll fight the Mayweathers, and I know you're kind of looking at me and thinking, "Oh, what is he talking about?" But this is it. It's what it's what the public wants. They want to see a spectacle.
It's the reality of today's boxing, and it's a part of it, and everyone should just accept it. No, but to be honest with you, everyone should just accept it. And I don't have a problem with these YouTube boxers at all, because you should be able to view and watch whatever you want to watch. If you are hardcore into boxing, then you watch the hardcore boxing. If you just like a casual fan that likes to watch just big fights or watch YouTube fights, it's completely up to you. I don't see why anybody would have a major problem with it. Boxing's still going to continue.
It's a bit of a disrespect, though, for someone like someone like me who's coming up and trying to make a scene, and you see people like KSI and Logan Paul headlining the show with people like Billy Joe Saunders and Devin Haney on the undercard. You think, if they haven't got a chance,
something's not right here, yeah.
And you think it's a bit of a disrespect for boxers coming up. They're thinking, like, for me, like I said, like, I know that the people I called out, like Tommy Fury, Idris Virgo, Jack Fincham from Love Island, because that's where, at the moment, I know the money's going to be at, if you know what I mean. If I want to fight someone domestic level at my... So if I called someone out on
how many fights have you had? How many fights you had?
Five. Or 1 4.
So 5 fights?
Yeah.
Well, the best thing for you right now is we can't change the current climate. This is boxing as it is right now. And these guys are using social media as an aid. Yeah. This is the way it's going. I mean, if I keep saying the same thing to the guys in my gym, 5-0, 7-0, 10-0. I keep telling these guys, if you don't get active on social media and do things outside of boxing, you're going to be left in the background. It's just the way it is. This is not the 80s or 90s no more. And that's why I've had to move away from certain coaches, because they didn't understand where I was trying to go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
As the comment says, ask you one question. I mean, did you watch Jake Paul's fight, and what did you make of his performance? You know, as a boxing coach, did he? I mean, it wasn't much of a fight to watch, but what did you make of it?
Which one was Jake Paul again? Who did he fight?
He's a younger who's the MMA fighter that he fought, that he knocked out?
Ben Askren. Ben Askren.
Yeah.
No, I didn't see that.
Didn't see that. What about Logan Paul versus Mayweather?
I saw highlights of that. That was funny.
Yeah. In terms of boxing, I mean, you've got to give him credit for stepping, putting the hard yards in, the training camp, and stepping into the ring. We myself and Faisal, we talk boxing every day, but stepping into the ring is a different ball game. I
think Floyd almost learnt a harsh lesson, because he clearly didn't think the guy was going to come in and try that hard. And he got caught with a couple of good shots as well. But again, like, why are you in the ring with somebody that big? I mean, regardless of their skills, I mean, the guy is massive in comparison to Floyd. I mean, Floyd was barely a welterweight. I mean, he's got no business doing it. And at this stage in his career, he doesn't need to be doing that either. He could have exhibition fights against other guys. But again, there's hardly a fighter in history that hasn't gone on too long. So these guys, they can't walk away or stay out of the spotlight. They can't do it. They try it.
Yeah,
Umar Farouk says more comebacks than a yo-yo. Hope Dillian Whyte destroys him. Hey, version 10.
There's Dillian next Whyte then.
Being obviously a boxing fanatic, as I like to call myself, I watch everything, all the interviews on the IFL's Boxing Social. Shout out to those channels who put in endless amount of work. And I remember Dillian did an interview after David's first fight with Tony Bellew, and he said, look, if you want to make a bit of money, just come and fight me. You make more money fighting me than you will with Tony Bellew. So I don't know. Look, one thing that I can give respect for is David Haye is not doing this because he reckons he's going to challenge for a world title and he's going to avenge his defeat to Vladimir Klitschko. He's doing this because he said he wants to put Joe Fournier in his place. Joe Fournier reckons he can beat him now. Joe Fournier is talking a good fight. I think we've lost Xavier for a second. I'm sure he'll be back joining us soon. But one good thing about this is it's not a long-term thing. It's just a case of comeback.
He doesn't need the money. If he's getting offered more than he got from Bellew, like I said, anyone would take it, no matter what. Like Mike Tyson, like anyone else, they're getting offered millions to fight and train. Anyone would take it.
Which is why
if you got offered $7 million to fight someone, would you do it?
Xavier, if you got offered a certain amount of money like David Haye's getting to fight Joe Fournier, would you take it?
I can't hear you guys.
All right. If you got offered a certain amount of money to fight, like David Haye's getting offered to fight Joe Fournier, we've lost him. It's okay. It's okay. It doesn't matter. We'll move on to our next topic. If he comes back on, brilliant. If not, massive shout out to Xavier Miller. We'll share his social media links in our description. Talk a bit about, obviously, we'll sort of stay on this topic. Jake Paul has a hit list. Is the boxing world starting to take him serious? He obviously released that video the other day and pronounced Tommy Fury as Timmy Fury. There's names on there such as Kamaru Usman and Canelo Alvarez. This guy, for me, right, he's either got a huge set of nuts or he has got a screw loose in his head. Like, he is verbally, assaulting Conor McGregor's wife. He's talking about Tommy Fury's girlfriend. He's saying stuff that you wouldn't even say if you got paid. Like, I don't know whether it's a great tactical move to get these guys in the ring or if it's just blind, stupid. What did you... Oh, Xavier's back. Brilliant. What did you guys make of the video and his hit list? And just talk to me about Jake Paul. Is he right in the head? Because I think this guy is leading up to a serious beating. Right?
I've got two words for you, and he's very clever. And it's clickbait. That's what it is. He's generating interest. He's getting people looking at him. Love me or hate me, you're still going to watch me. I think that's Mayweather's famous words. And he's, people are going to watch him. People are going to take an interest in him.
Yeah.
Positive or negative media. He doesn't care. He's a young, good-looking kid who's taken a real interest in boxing. And he's
not that good-looking.
Well, look, do you know what I mean? He sells. He sells. And he's going to get publication. He's going to be in the social media. He'll get the tweets. He'll get the retweets, whatever you want to call it. So, this is what Xavier was talking about, about he's encouraging his boys in the gym to use social media to aid their careers.
Yep.
Let's be honest, Canelo. Canelo's been with the best. What's he going to do to Jake Paul? We don't even need to discuss that.
Forget that. Calling out Kamaru Usman, who is an absolute animal. Did you not see what he done to Jorge Masvidal a couple of months ago? Calling out Conor McGregor. Ron said he's clickbait, but I actually genuinely think he might end up getting some of these fights if he keeps on winning because, people are actually investing in Jake Paul now. Do I like it? No, not really. But the guy is making noise. The guy is making things interesting. He's going to 100% fight Tommy Fury. There's a reason why Tommy Fury is going to fight on the same show as Jake Paul because Tommy's going to beat whoever he's fighting. I'm picking Jake Paul to beat Tyron Woodley. And then you know what's going to happen. They're both going to come...
No.
What? Hear me out. They're both going to come together and that's where the fight gets made. It's common sense. They are putting Tommy Fury on that card. They don't need to branch him out in America. He's got over 1 million followers on Instagram. He is going to America to get rounds under his belt, one, and two, to sort of sign on the dotted line to fight Jake Paul. And when he does fight Jake Paul, I hope Tommy Fury destroys him. Got nothing against Jake Paul, but there are certain things you just don't do in boxing. Calling out Conor McGregor's one thing, but to then insult his wife and then to call out Kamaru Usman and say he can't even hit hard. I'm like, I will even send you the video of what he done to Jorge Masvidal. Watching that fight put me in pain after the way he knocked him out. This guy has got some serious cojones now. Xavier, you mentioned about something about your fighters going out there, they need to branch out to social media. But surely you tell them there's a certain limit you don't cross. Has this guy crossed all limits for you?
I think he's got the right to do whatever he wants to do. He's not someone that I follow or pay attention to. Like I said earlier, it's up to the consumer whether they want to follow these guys. They don't have to. He's obviously taking it well. In his mind, he's taking it seriously. It's not the kind of thing I take seriously, but I don't knock someone else's hustle. They can do whatever they want to do. I'm into the business of trying to, make world champions. But I don't knock anybody for the way they go about trying to make their money. As long as obviously they're not doing anything harmful to somebody else, it's that they can do what they're doing,
Ron, you asked Xavier the question about Logan Paul's boxing skills. You've seen Jake fight 3 fights. He's won all 3 by knockout. What do you rate his boxing skills as?
He's won 3 fights. That's it, really. Look at his opponents. Ex-retired MMA fighters,
basketball
players, YouTuber. So it's not really much to go on. It's not like much of a highlight reel. If he was fighting someone like a Mike Stephenson, who's knows his thing about a thing or two about boxing and technique, then it's a different ball game. Mike would probably love that.
Get paid. Nice payday.
That's the main thing. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on when he does fight someone like a Tommy Fury. I think Tommy Fury needed this for his career, to be honest. His career, what's going on with his career, to be honest. But so,
as we mentioned, he's calling out anyone and everyone. Xavier, I have to ask you this question: how do you react if one of his next call-outs is Dillian Whyte? Because that would, for me, just would be plain insight asking for a beating. I know you said, look, you don't mind whatever people do for their hustle. And the bottom line is he does make noise. But how do you react if he does mention Dillian's name and Dillian hears it? You know what Dillian's like?
The first thing I'd do is start laughing. And then I'll just say, well, be careful what you wish for, because Dillian doesn't seem to mind fighting anybody in a boxing ring, in a cage. Doesn't care.
He used to do MMA, didn't he?
He's been involved in kickboxing.
Dillian will do it for free. I'll tell you that. You won't even need to get paid for it.
I done a poll on Instagram the other day, right? And it was obviously an Instagram story poll. And I put a massive picture up of the Mitchell brothers. And I goes, you get the chance to pick 2 brothers you call to a fight to back you up if they fight Phil and Grant Mitchell from EastEnders. One side I put Tyson Fury and Shane Fury. The other side I put Dillian Whyte and his brother Dean Whyte. 92% of the voters voted for Dillian and his brother. That is how much, I've seen Dean at a press conference go mental.
That's my guy, man. Dean, big up.
I've got a lot of time for Dean, and honestly, I think Dean scares me more than Dillian because I've not really had the chance to spend much time with Dillian. I've seen him at the Lucas Brown weigh-in and I think he's at one of the Joshua fights, but I've never had the chance to interview him. But yeah, listen.
Did you see when Billy Joe and Canelo when the massive kicked off? You see Dean just big self in the middle of it.
Forget that when Joshua and Dillian Whyte nearly come to blows at the end of the second round, who's the first person to jump in the ring?
Yeah.
Dean. But anyway, look, final topic, because the man that's joined us today, Michael Stephenson, returns to action September the 5th. Michael, how's training camp going? How's preparation going? Any signs of a potential opponent?
No, I haven't. I'm just negotiating with my trainer manager now about an opponent.
Who manages you?
Errol Johnson.
And what weight do you fight at?
Middle to super middle.
Okay, we'll have to do. We'll try and organise some sparring. I've got quite a few down my gym.
Yeah.
Xavier, sorry, Mike. What advice would you give to Michael? I know you've got a few fighters in the early stages of their career, but what would your advice to be to Michael now that he's getting back in the ring? He's getting through all this pandemic. We're getting back to small hall boxing shows. What's the advice you'd give over to a fighter such as Michael?
I would say, well, you've already got a manager and a promoter, but I would say make sure you're with someone who can keep you busy. You see, I sent a lot of my fighters in the early stages to Steve Goodwin because very rarely does he cancel a show, and it was very important for me, for my fighters to go out regularly, at least 4 to 5 times a year. And Steve was the one that was consistent. So I think at this stage where you're learning, the one thing you don't want to be doing is just sitting in the gym. You want to be going out because obviously every time you go out, you're learning, and make sure they pick guys that you're going to learn from. Don't try not to. You see, I'm not a fan of fighting a lot of journeymen that just are there to survive or just get that. To me, you're not going to learn anything from that. You go through long training camps, you have really hard sparring sessions, and then you end up fighting that level. To me, in America, when I watched the early career of like a Donald Curry or a Holyfield, the guys from the pro debuts are coming to win, and I think that's what made these guys great, because it's not realistic and it's not reality to me to get into a boxing match and someone just to give you a win. I mean, what exactly are you getting from it? So I'd rather fight someone stubborn, and it's not just about taking you the rounds. I'd rather fight someone who's coming to have a go than take me the rounds because it's competitive. So that's what I would say. If it's someone you're not going to learn anything from, I would say, step up your competition and don't be scared to step up early. Because you learn a lot about yourself. When you have real fights. When you don't have real fights and you're carried, what's the point of getting to like 15-0 and not afford anybody at distance? It's no good. If you're going to have to take a draw or a loss early in your career, sometimes that's the best thing that can happen to a fighter, because you're fighting real guys, and it's.
That's what I done on my second fight. I fought someone who on a winning record. I wanted to push it. He was like 8 wins, 3 losses. I was just 1-0.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? Like, I thought I could beat him. A lot of stuff happened. I'm not making excuses with it, but I should have beat him. And he beat me, and I can't and Faisal knows me and that guy have interactions all the time. I wanted the rematch straight away because I knew Dillian, when he lost against Povetkin, I knew what I'd done wrong. I knew what, and straight away I asked Faye, I think you were there at the fight, and I go, next fight, I want him again. I want him in the 6th rounder, second fight, because I knew what to do to beat him. But the guy didn't want a rematch. So, but like you said, thanks for that, Xavier. I appreciate that.
That's the best way. Honestly, boxing is real, and you don't want to get found out later in your career. Like, when you have hard fights, you come back to the gym, and there's stuff that you need to work on, and it's realistic. It's you don't want to sell yourself short. Everyone's ceiling is different. Everybody wants to be a world champion, but as I said to the guys in my gym. To some of the guys, a Southern area or English will feel like a world title to them because that's their ceiling. And as long as my fighters have actually won something, I'm happy. I was happy when Kay won his English title. I felt exactly the same when Dillian regained his title. To me, it's just about levels and reaching your potential. So. Yeah, now I've spoken to you. Obviously, I want to. If I haven't seen you fight before, I want to see you fight now.
Yeah, thank you,
Ron. What with small hall shows coming back in, and fighters like Michael are going to be more active, more busy. Xavier just mentioned fighters. He's sending his fights to fight with Steve Goodwin, and I actually cover their shows, and they're brilliant shows. They don't get the recognition that they deserve. What do you want to see now? Now we're getting back into small hall boxing show, and how important is it that we push these crop of fighters to the next level, given what's been going on in the world, and that small hall boxing has had to obviously take a massive hit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm planning to do my first IQ boxing promotion show late November, and I'm just what I'm hearing now is that they're only going to allow 9 fights each show. Financially, that makes it very difficult to get back a return. So that's why I pushed my date all the way to end of November, hoping that the British Boxing Board will push the fights up to maybe 12 or 15 fights a show, because it is difficult for these smaller promoters because there's no TV money. You've got to make your money from ticket sales. We do have our show is going to be a little bit different. Obviously, I can't give anything away right now, but it's the kind of show that a boxer will want to be on, because it's going to be real fights. There's not going to be any, apart from maybe one debut, there won't be any journeyman fights on my show. there'll be 50-50 fights straight. And,
that's what
you know.
we need.
And I told the guys at my gym, they keep screaming, "Oh, we want to be on that show." No problem. You'll be fighting like for like. So if you want it, it's not a problem. But when people come out to see this show, I want them to come back because they've sat there and watched competitive fight after competitive fight. That's the feel that I want from it. And if it goes well, then I don't mind doing maybe 2 or 3 shows a year. But it's all experimental. I didn't plan to be a promoter. Just one of the guys at my gym, Santos, you know, he said that he would lead that side of the business because me and Nick are so busy training fighters. So I said, fine, you know, as long as you, you know, you arrange most of the meetings, then obviously we'll be there and we'll work together on the night and try and make it a bit special.
Fair play to you, man.
If you need a middle or super middleweight, let me know. Yeah,
I'll be listen. You text me on Insta. I'll be happy to put you on. It's not a problem. You know, but like I said, as long as your manager and you know your support system is happy for you to be involved in those kind of fights, because what I would really like is if a guy like a guy 5-0 or a guy 5-1, put them together. You know, we talk about a purse. If the fight is really competitive, it's really close, the next show, let's have a rematch. That's the kind of vibe I want to create off my show. So if people are happy to be involved in real fights, then, you know, send me a text.
Xavier, the way you just sold that, I might just go and make my own fight camp in my back garden, and I might let you promote it. That definitely sold it for me. Mike, just give us a second, Ron. Again, relate the question back to you. What are you hoping to see the next level for small hall boxing shows as we are getting back to normality?
No, people like Mike. I mean, giving them exposure. That's it. These boys have been starved of making a living. You know, that's it. That's their bread and butter. So it's been tough. You know, we've been fortunate. You know, these elite fighters, they've had their sponsorship deals. They've got their big fights eventually. But these up and coming fighters, they've had to suffer. They've been training in the gym, and they feel like their career is kind of rotting away a little bit. So I'm really happy now this pandemic's kind of coming to an end. We're going to see more of these up and coming boxers coming through. And I mean, I'm hoping next time we chat with Xavier, he's going to tell us about an up and coming prospect, you know, from one of his shows that he's raving on about that we must interview or have on the show.
100%.
Going back to Ron's thing, like I said, I'm lucky. I'm a full-time. I'm a PE teacher, a qualified PE teacher, and I work at a youth prison. So luckily, I've had an income coming through for the last 8 months. There's guys that I know at like my gym. They are amazing boxers, and they've had to. You'd think, oh my god, they're working in warehouses because
it's got to survive, man.
Survive.
Got to pay the rent.
Like even the journeyman, I feel it for them because obviously, you know, they're getting through 4 rounders and 6 rounders, and that's because they want to box next week. Now with no boxing, you know, their income, you know, it's gone. It's been a very difficult period for everyone. But listen, honestly, the strongest survive. If you really, really want to box, this is a test. You know, the guys 100%. That really want it, you'll see them back in action this year or early next year. But the guys that have said, you know what, no, this is too much for me and I'm not going to do it anymore, they didn't really want it that badly. It's a test.
Well, listen, it's definitely good to hear Xavier's looking to put on his shows, and Mike returns on September the 5th. Steve Goodwin's also announced a few shows. It's good to finally
What show are you going to be on, Mike? What show are you going to be on?
A local home show, Bedford.
Bedford?
Yeah, that's where I'm from, yeah. So.
Oh, because I'll be looking to my show is going to actually be in Dunstable.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll talk.
I'm sensing a rivalry here, like Bedford versus Dunstable. You know, get them together. You know, perfect, man. Honestly, no. Listen, Xavier, please feel free to send us as much information of those shows over as you can, and we'll do whatever we can to help out. We'd love to come down and cover as well, if that's all right with you. You know,
no
retweet everything.
I've got quite a few announcements coming soon as well.
Yeah.
I've got about 3 boxers coming through right now that obviously you know they're going to do something. I mean, you probably watched Yusuf Kamari as well against Kane Baker the other day.
Very good fighter.
You would have seen K Prosper. So yeah, it's the next batch that are coming that I'm excited about because obviously I've built them through the amateurs. So
It's exciting times, and listen, I mean, we're always here to support any young and up and coming fighter. And look, how long does it take to follow someone's Instagram account, to retweet their tweet? You know, it's not a big ask, and whatever we can do to help, we'll definitely be up for that. Guys, before we bring the podcast to an end, is there anything else you'd like to add? Ron, Xavier, Mike, floor's all yours.
I think we've said enough tonight. I think all of us. I think we've gone on for about an hour and 10 minutes.
I'm actually exhausted. I've just finished training Dillian, so because we train.
Are you in Portugal now then, or?
Yeah, I only went home for a few days, so obviously the fight date looks like October the 30th, so we're working towards that. So yeah, we're in full training camp.
Xavier, take it from me, embrace it out there in Portugal, because all we've had is rain, wind. You must be loving it out there, and get to hang out with Dillian Whyte. I tell you what, if you go on a night out and you take Dillian with you, you've got nothing to worry about, because no one's saying nothing to you if you're out on a night out with Dillian Whyte. But honestly, no. Listen, guys, thank you. Massive shout out to Xavier and Mike for jumping on. Sorry that it went on as longer as expected.
Guys.
That's all we've got time for today on podcast 37. Xavier and Mike's social media links will be below in the description. Check them out. Check out IQ Boxing. And of course, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. And thank you for listening for episode 37 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast.
Take care, guys. See you soon.
See you later.
Take care, man. Thank you, Xavier. Yeah.